Hello, and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotions. And today's focus, we're going to talk about how to grow your practice here. We have Bob Thomas, who's the founder and CEO of Achieve Physical Therapy, a successful 4-location practice in Massachusetts. And Bob's been able to grow his practice from 1 location to 4 locations. And so he's going to give us his success story and what he's done to systematize in his practice and help him expand. So, Bob, great to have you on the show with us here today.
Hi, Neil. Yes, thanks for hosting me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump in here. Let's talk about this. So Achieve Physical Therapy, you have 4 locations, and you've obviously gone through an evolution there of business growth and business systems. And so for you, in order to manage 4 locations, like how do you really monitor the performance of each clinic?
I would say it probably starts with we have like what we call an operations scorecard. And so this is a scorecard that consists of key performance indicators for each clinic. So each clinic has the same key performance indicators. And so we get to see that on a weekly basis. And that helps us monitor, how each one of the clinics is performing.
And that does probably we do the same thing, right? So, I think that's one of the keys to scaling your business, right? And especially as you have multiple locations and you can't be at every location all the time, right? And you've got to have trust in your clinic directors to manage those clinics effectively. But how do you get that information from afar, right? And everybody's got to be on the same page, right? And having that scorecard can really just help everybody be dialed into, hey, what's our targets? What's our metrics? Are we on track? Are we off track? And so is that something that you put in fairly early on in your business or like later on in your business?
Yeah, so we started the business in January of 2008, and we put this system in fall of 2015. So we're coming up on 9 years. But yes, it was kind of later on, like halfway through. And so, yeah, to your point, if you look at these KPIs, they all have targets as well. And so our clinic directors, there's 4 of them, they every week they look at their KPIs and they go to their reports and write in their measurables, and then we compare that to the target. And so if it's on track, like you said, it's green, and if it's off track, it's red. And if it's off track long enough, we have some conversations, we dive deeper into it. So that's kind of our system, how we use that. Yeah.
That's cool. And so did you notice that kind of before you started doing that, kind of it was maybe harder to keep track of things and then that got easier after doing that?
Yeah, to your point earlier, we have 4 locations. It's really hard to be in 4 places at once. And you have to ask the right questions to the right people. So if you're going to your clinic director and how's everything going, a lot of times you're getting, oh, it's fine. Everything's great. Everything's fine. But you really need to dig into, yeah, how do you measure that? How do you measure fine? What does that really mean? So yeah, it's gotten a lot better now that we actually have some numbers behind it that we can actually, lead into some of these conversations of like, help me understand this and tell me about this one a little bit more.
hmm So did you find that as you scaled to that second location and then that third location, 4th location, did you find that you needed to have better systems in order to manage things?
Absolutely. So yes, systems, processes, and just the consistency across the board. It was what we were learning fast is, once you got to 2 and 3 clinics, things started to change. And you would go to these different offices and things were being done differently. And, we all talk about being ambitious and scaling our company. We were scaling our problems fairly easily. So yeah.
That's a good way to put it, right? Do you want to scale your business or scale your problems?
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of times we scale our problems because we're not really focused on the
Yes.
business, the fundamentals in it. And I think, one of the key things that I've seen successful entrepreneurs like yourself do is you master the basics, you master the fundamentals, and you make sure those fundamentals keep going in the clinic, because it's easy for things to fall off. It's easy for things to fall out. And then people start to go off on tangents and stuff starts to break and not work right. Right.
Yes.
Um, so you mentioned scorecards. What other kind of fundamental things do you do to keep your team like together and kind of working on rhythms within your business?
So I think, yeah, I think you can take that scorecard and we wanted to then kind of operationalize it, meaning we have an operations meeting every week. It's on Tuesday at 12:20, and the four clinic directors will get together with our head of operations, and they have an agenda. And so it starts on that time every week, it ends on time every week, and it follows a certain agenda. And part of that is the scorecard. And when they go over the scorecard, each clinic director will read through their KPIs and they'll read what the target is and then what the actual number was that week. And we do this on a weekly basis. And like I said before, if it's, it's green, it's on track, and it's red, it's off track. And they'll read through that. And so they're the ones reporting on those numbers every week. And it's a very quick process that probably takes less than 5 minutes to do. And there's no discussion at that point. If somebody is off track multiple times, like, if it's a one-off, it's a one-off. But if it's 3 times or 3 out of 4 weeks or something like that, we can drop that down to the issues list. And then, if we have time to talk about it that day or it's a priority, we try to lean into that. So I think you have a scorecard, but then it's how do you operationalize that scorecard and putting it into that weekly meeting cadence,
Mhm.
and being able to talk about it and lean into it. And I think being able to have that transparency and that accountability is really big, because that's where I think you bring it to life. And if something's off track, I'm going to ask you about it, or the head of operations is going to ask you about it. So let's be prepared for that. Let's lean into those conversations instead of trying to sweep things under the rug. So a lot of visibility and transparency there, and then some peer accountability at the same time.
That's wonderful. Yeah, you got to have the accountability and leaders want that too. Like the managers, clinic directors, they want that. You know, they want that oversight. To some degree, some accountability, and of course, you acknowledge great efforts, great production, but then you're catching things early when they can be modified or changed, right? And then you're not getting stuck when you're a month later and you're like, oh, okay, why are things so bad this last month? And that's impacting things to come. So it's about keeping things on track and getting ahead of the curve, right? Then behind it.
Yeah.
So obviously you've done some training on this and implementation of these systems. So what kind of business training have you done and implemented in your practice to be successful?
So we started with EOS, which is the entrepreneurial operating system. I know there's a lot of practices that have implemented that, and I think it started out, this is a long time ago, probably back in 2013 or 14. I read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, and really liked it. Started talking to the people at EOS and hired an implementer that we worked with for about 2 years, which was really good. And I would highly recommend that, because that's somebody it's an outside voice. It's gonna look very objectively at your business, and you have a lot of blind spots, and if you get somebody good that's gonna kind of point those out to you, I think it's very humbling and very helpful at the same time. So we started rolling out EOS in the fall of 2015, and that's where those scorecards were born. We started using them and that sort of thing. So that's the biggest, I think the biggest change for us was, okay, we need to get on an operating system, kind of a people operating system. And we thought that EOS was going to be the best fit for us. And here we are almost like 9 years later, and we're still using it. And it's been very helpful.
Yeah, it's a very good system. Like you said, a lot of businesses operate off of that principle or modifications of that type of structure. We operate off of something similar to that, and so that's when you're talking scorecards and meeting rhythms and things like that. I know what you're talking about. So, but I kudos to you, because I think what you saw there was like, hey, I needed to improve the business operations, right? And the structure of the business part of it, right? And how can what's working out there and being able to implement that into your practice. And so I do see that's where some clinics kind of struggle, is it's usually, as it always is for a lot of businesses, small businesses, is you build it from yourself, right, as the practice owner. But there's only so far that you can go by yourself, right? And you
Yes.
need to be able to delegate and expand and grow and delegate to others and have others lead for you too. So you end up being the bottleneck at the top. But
Yes.
you saw that, you realized that, hey, I've got to learn things, I got to implement these different tools, and that gives opportunities to other directors and leaders in my organization, and then we can move forward, right?
Yes.
And so
Exactly.
were there other resources that you did too in kind of implementation for, business and solutions in your practice to help you scale?
I think EOS was the big one. At the same time, I started working with a peer group. That's been helpful. And I also, part of that peer group was some executive coaching, which was great. So,
Excellent.
to have kind of a peer group as kind of advisory council that you can go and kind of a sounding board and hear about some of their challenges and their successes and what's worked for them and it's not so much industry specific, it was multiple different industries, and then being able to meet with a coach on a regular basis was huge, and then more recently in the last 6 years, working with a more industry specific peer group has been an amazing experience. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good. And then have you done anything to help you with your marketing resources and growing that aspect, marketing and sales part of your business?
Yeah, so for the marketing side of it, working with Practice Promotions. So we joined with Practice Promotions back, I believe we went live January of 2022, so about 2.5 years ago. And we've learned a lot there compared to what we were doing prior to that, which we can get into. And then from a sales standpoint, we have a Physician Liaison Program as well. So we have somebody who's dedicated to the relationship with, in terms of prospecting and nurturing and growing relationships with referral providers in the
Mhm.
medical community.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's a key thing too for practices that want to scale is developing those relationships with the physicians, right? But one mistake I do see for clinics is that they sometimes think their marketing coordinator or marketing director in their clinic is the person that goes out and meets and greets doctors. And it's not. It's not the same thing. A marketing coordinator in your clinic is a person that actually is like a project manager, right? And they coordinate the marketing actions for your clinic, from website to social media, a lot of getting content from within the clinic, asking for reviews and making sure those are all happening, those kind of things. And then like for you, you saw, hey, let's develop our networking capabilities with physicians, and that's a true physician liaison that's going out, and it's not a marketing position, it's actually a sales
Mm.
position,
Yeah,
right?
it's a different animal. Yes,
Yeah.
100%. Yep.
Absolutely. So fantastic. And so you've grown to these 4 locations here, and this is one of the issues that we do see with more and more locations, and we work with a lot of multi-location practices. All the way, I think we've got one client that's like 120 location practice. But the bigger you get, I think one of the main pain points is that there tends to be an underperforming clinic location. So have you had that happen to you in the past? Like, was there something that you did to fix it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they all, so there's 4 locations and they all probably were underperforming at some point. So yes, and I think it just depends on what the issue is. And I think that if you have your plan and you have your scorecard and you kind of know where you want to be and what the capacity of that clinic is, what is the potential of that clinic, and where do you stand in relation to that potential or that capacity? Um, and then what is it, or what are the things? It's typically they don't have enough patients, they may not have enough providers, there might be kind of a personnel issue, underperformers. So those are some of the common ones
Mhm.
that I think I've seen or worked on the most, where it's more, hey, we don't have enough patients and we have too many providers, or we don't have enough providers, we have too many patients, or that we have a person that might just not be the right fit for us, and we need to lean into those conversations. And so having like especially with the personnel stuff, the EOS framework's been really helpful to kind of take some of those subjective feelings that we have and make them a little more objective and like, okay, there's an issue here, we need to lean into it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think you as you scale, you just it makes sense. Like those, when you do have those underperforming locations, it's probably because the business systems aren't as strong, right? Or you're
Yeah.
not catching things early enough, right? And so it comes
Yeah.
down to, again, those meeting rhythms, those scorecards, those metrics, those KPIs, like all those kind of things um, that you need to be monitoring, and people monitoring for you, right? So it's
Yeah.
not just you doing it, right? And I
Right.
always love this analogy, like if you think of practice, it's like spinning plates on the stick, like you've seen those jugglers, right?
Yep.
And so you have all these plates spinning, and you go and put a lot of attention on get these plates spinning over here, and then the other plates over there start to slow down a little bit. You got to run back over and you got to spin those up. But you can imagine that, okay, now add two, three, four times as many plates as you add those locations. You need some people to spin those plates for you. You can't
Yes.
like run back and forth and do it. So
Right.
again, where I've seen clinic owners fail in locations is that they haven't scaled their team, their management team, their directors, and
Mhm.
empowered them, given the business tools and training to operate those businesses effectively and coordinated as a group. And so then it comes back on the practice owner, and they're trying to like run between all these different locations to make things happen. And then balls start to fall, right?
Yeah.
Plates start to fall
Yeah.
with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you've gone through this evolution of growth in your business, and I'm curious, how did you know when it was time to open that next location?
Do you want more freedom in your clinic? Then you need to work on your business, not just in it. The top practice owners know that they need a marketing system that consistently attracts patients from the internet. And at Practice Promotions, we've helped hundreds of practice owners skyrocket to the top of Google and get more new patients from online. Go to practicepromotions.net/kit to get our free practice marketing sample kit. It includes all our digital marketing tips and tricks that will get you new patients from Google. That's practicepromotions.net/kit, KIT, for a free marketing kit. And now back to the show.
Okay, I think there's a right time, and then there's a lot of temptation and opportunities and shiny objects that will, and so if you're ambitious and um you got to be clear on your prerequisites for expansion. And so, and I'll talk about this probably more, but just the capacity of that first clinic, where are we? We have a plan, we have a business plan, there's a capacity, and there's an ideal that we want to get to. And in getting to a pretty high, either getting there or getting to very close with a high percentage of that capacity is probably where we want to be. Because as soon as you open up that next one, you could be scaling your problems. You're going to be taking on more expenses. There's additional rent and utilities. Never mind the build out that you have to put into this. So you've got to make sure that financially you're in a good place, and that you've kind of been there for a little while to kind of maybe build up some reserves that you can reinvest into clinic number two or clinic number three. But I don't think there's any like loss of opportunities or scarcity of opportunities out there. And I think you really have to have that self-discipline, or maybe it's more
Mm.
self-control that, like, okay, just because somebody's saying, hey, we got this great space 2 towns away, that's part of this gym or whatever. It's like, all right, like you got to make sure you are set first where you are. So, and then when you are, those opportunities, I think, will still come around, and you'll be able to take something and make it great. And I think that, yeah, that's if
That
that
makes
answers your
sense. Yeah,
question.
you gotta get the house in order first, right? Before
Yeah.
you can expand. And that's a great point that you make, is that there are opportunities that come along, right? And it's easy to um, stretch yourself beyond your means, right? And I think in business, a lot does come down to self-control, because there's
Yeah.
opportunities that come by. There's people knocking on your door, for opportunities. Hey, you want to buy out this clinic? Or, there's this space available over here, and this could be a good opportunity. And there's times when you want to take risks, but there's also, like you said, you just have to evaluate where you are, and are you going to put yourself at too much risk if
Yeah.
you stretch
Yeah.
that bar? And you do have to have, I think, again, sometimes people don't look at the runway length that they need to get going, right? To a point
Mhm.
where they're break even and then profitable in that
Yeah.
practice. And you can have the ideal scene like, hey, this thing will be profitable in 3 months. But life happens, the world happens, and it may
Yeah.
take 6 months. And so do you have
Yeah.
the reserves that you need to operate at a loss for a little bit longer than you think you'll need? Um, so
Yes.
I definitely see all those kind of mistakes happen, but I love the way you say like it's really about self-control for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I think
And
so.
so in this expansion for you, like what would you say was your number one mistake that you made, say, in your early days as a practice owner?
That's easy. So we opened the first location in January of 2008. We opened the second location 55 days later in March of 2008. And it was just me. I was the only provider. And so I would work from 7 to 1 in one location on it's Monday, eat lunch in the car and go over and start like at 1:30 and go to 8 o'clock in the other location. And the next day I would just flip flop to give the illusion that we were open like full time and we had this army of therapists and it was just really me. And so again, shiny object. I had my sights on clinic B the whole time, but then somebody dangled clinic A in front of me and I took the bait. And so opening 2 clinics within 60 days was really stupid. And so what I learned from that is, yeah, just get in, do one, get good at it, start small, stay disciplined, and
Mhm.
have that self-control and have a detailed vision of what you want. Because this clinic two can come along if you're successful with clinic one. I just wasn't disciplined or had that self-control at the time,
Yeah.
and I paid for it for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being honest about
Yeah.
that, because it is I think a fundamental trap that a lot of practice owners fall into is the mindset that in order for me to be successful, I have to have multiple locations.
Mhm.
And that's just not true. You can be very successful with one location, and then what happens, as you well know here, is that you go too big too soon, and you don't have real good profitability in your first location. So you're doubling your rent, your utilities, all those kind of things, right? In order to just have the pride of having more than one location, right?
Yeah.
It's such a common thing that I see with practice owners, and it's a big reason I think for burnout with practice owners is they just overstretch themselves for that kind of goal. But lesson learned, right? And come
Lesson
back
learned.
and get things in place, and off you
Yeah.
go, right? So,
Yes.
what advice would you then give to a practice owner who is looking to, say, open up that next location?
Yeah, coming off of what we just talked about, I think there can be a lot of ego. And I think that, you know, opening like the number of clinics that you have is kind of a vanity metric where we kind of compare each other to ourselves to each other, where it's like, okay, how many clinics do you have and how many do you have? And I think there's too much of that. And I would rather have less clinics and have them profitable versus double the clinics and have them underperforming. And so I do think that opening clinics is easy. Opening a physical location, I think, is the easy part. It's getting that building a successful and profitable clinic. That's the challenge. And so I think that's something that it wasn't always top of mind with me. And it took me a long time to learn that, okay, let's stop expanding and making things more difficult on myself and straining the business and my people. And let's just keep it, let's back it off a little bit
Mhm.
and tighten it up. And so we talked about scaling the business versus scaling your problems. We were certainly scaling our problems by trying to go out too quickly with numbers. Um, and as I said earlier, like the clinic number one better be performing well because you're going to be taking on, more rent, more utilities, a build out maybe. So I think the advice is to know what your business get a business plan and know what it is and stick to it. And what could you really do if that first clinic was really operating at its full potential, its full capacity? What would that look like? And get close to that, get there or get close to that. Be in a good place, and not just get there and then do it right away, but get there and like, okay, let it ride for a little bit, build up some reserves, and then go for it. Like those opportunities are still going to come.
Yeah. And so is there any other tips on managing a multi-location practice that you have for practice owners out there?
Yeah, I think deciding how much, if any, how much patient care you want to be involved in. You had said this earlier with, if you've got, two, three, four, five clinics, like you cannot be in all those locations at the same time. Um, you're going to have to, somebody needs to steer the ship. And so you can't just abdicate that responsibility. So if you're the one, and I've been there before where I'm treating all these patients, my schedule's always full. No one's canceling. Everybody's showing up. And I've got other people that are working with me. But there's some cancellations and some no-shows, and they're kind of in the break room. And we're trying to grow. And so you got to figure out how much you really want to be involved in patient care. And you can do it either way. You can be involved in patient care, um, or you may not. You could take a step back. And for me, I took a step back from it back in about 8 years ago. And so that's something that I wanted to do at that point. If you're still involved in patient care, you need somebody to step up and steer the ship, because if you're going to multiple locations, you need to have people there. And so it's not, and I don't mean just leadership development, because you're going to need that too. You're going to need somebody to run that second or third office, but you also need somebody to kind of execute on all the initiatives and be more involved in the development of the business and the evolution of the business if you choose to be more clinical.
And so for yourself, where are you right now? Do you do any patient care at all?
No, so I stopped treating patients in the spring of 2016.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think again that I've seen it both ways where depending on where that practice owner wants to go, either they pull back and say, hey, you know what, like you said, I've got to steer the ship here. I've got to be the CEO of this business. And that's what really gives you the freedom and the time to scale with your team. And then if you can get to a point there where you have a little bit of free time and you start to bring in some. I've seen some practice owners where they might treat like 10 hours a week because they love it, they want to, right? So it's totally up to you as a practice owner, but you can't treat a lot and grow and scale a business. You just can't
Right.
do those two things together. So it has to be that probably that realization, like, hey, you know what, I need to pull back here and let the team do more of it, right?
Yes.
And so for you, as you've scaled your practice, what are some of the critical systems or functions that you look at? What areas that you're constantly trying to improve in your business?
Yeah. So I would look at kind of your organization chart if you don't have one. I think getting one and looking at those three major functions. So it's sales and marketing, it's operations, and it's finance. And so in developing those three functions or those three systems. And so part of operations, for example, if we kind of drill down, would be okay for the front desk. Okay, we need some systems for the front desk, and more specifically, we might need like an intake process. Or if you stick with operations and you're a provider, and we're talking about the actual clinical operations, we could drill down into like, what does your initial eval process look like? And what does your follow-up treatment look like? What does a service recovery look like? And documenting those things. And because I think if you don't write it down, you don't own it. And people are just going to kind of do their own thing. And so, through EOS, we've kind of adopted their document system, which is really trying to document the 20% that's going to provide 80% of the results. So if we're successful, we can have one-page document talking about here's the framework for how we want a new grad to come on as a provider and do an initial evaluation. And it's going to be a short one-page document that if they hit on all those points, they're 80% of the way there. And then once you can start doing training on top of that, we can fill in those gaps and get them up to the 100%. But it makes that training a lot easier when you can document what those expectations are in those steps, and they can agree to those terms and they understand the why behind it.
Yeah, you don't want to give them a 100-page document to read through
No.
on how to start doing this, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you say if you can keep it simple, one page.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it too, like you if you can make it easy to understand the core principles of what you're trying to get them to do, right? Whether it's a
Yeah.
PT, whether it's a front desk, whether it's a biller, like whatever, right? They can operate off of that, because then the next step, the majority of what happens is really on the job training, right? Is
Yes.
coaching and training them up.
Yes.
But they got that framework, as you said, to operate off of. So that's really
Yeah. The
key.
high level. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I like what you said there too, like because really for business, it really just falls into those three buckets, right? Sales and marketing, operations, and financial systems, right? So where I see a lot of practices, they put 80% of their effort on operations and 15% of their effort and worry around financial systems, and then maybe 5% on their sales and marketing, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
um,
We've been
the,
there. Yes.
the sales and marketing is what feeds the machine, right?
Yes.
You need the sales and marketing. That's what brings in people from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
But you can easily see where if you don't have strong in each one of those areas, that could be your weak point, right? That could be the part that's holding you back in the growth of your business there.
Yeah.
So just curious for you, you know, what effect has putting the effort on marketing, had on your business growth?
So yeah, between the sales and the marketing, we've seen double-digit new patient growth in the last, in the last 2 years, back-to-back years, which has been great. Yeah, by kind of having both those things. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just shows you, like, if you put the attention on that, you put the systems in for those two things, you've added a ton more fuel to the fire, and then you can really again focus on those operational improvements, financial improvements there. And then you have, I think you added on some doing Google Ads into your practice too, and like
Yep.
what impact has that had in your practice?
Yeah, so we kind of use that as almost like a sniper approach, like bring this in when we really need some help. And so we focused we typically will focus on one clinic at a time
Mhm.
and put a budget together, and we have a team that we work with on this. And yeah, so that's been our approach to it, to kind of top off a clinic when we need it. So it's kind of nice to be able to kind of turn that on and turn it off as need be, kind of month to month. So that's a great component. And we've I think since last year for this clinic in particular, we've seen about a 15% growth in new patients from our
Awesome.
Google Ads. Yeah.
Just from the Google Ads. That's awesome. Yeah, it's such a
Yeah.
critical part of today's world. To be at the top of Google, you got to pay to be there. That's why you run
Yeah.
Google Ads. But it is a strategy that we do recommend to multi-location clinics, is that you can rotate between different locations, like you said, to top them off. So we all know that, one location may be doing good one month, and then the other location another month is down a little bit. So you can manipulate and move your ad budget around to target and support those clinics that need a little bit of a boost that month. So
Yeah.
that's the key thing that we definitely advise multi-location clinics to be doing, and it keeps things much more even for everybody throughout the year there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bob, just curious here, you worked with us for a couple of years. What has your experience with practice promotions been like?
It's been good. I think what I've learned is there's just so much that goes into, and I'll call it, for lack of a better term, like the foundational, like digital assets. And so, you've got, before, years ago, we had another website. It's like, okay, we need a website because we need a website because everybody else has a website. But there's a lot that goes into it, which we weren't really realizing. We kind of knew, but not to the level that we understand it now. And so, for example, where we rank with SEO, where we rank with local SEO, how is our Google business profile performing? Starting to leverage Google Ads, and all of these things are now directed toward getting people to our website, which is our hub, and then being able to see what actions people are taking on our website to convert, and showing us there's a level that they're engaging with our website, and they are filling out appointment request forms, or they are calling us, and being able to track all that. That's all really big and like really important information that before we had a website to have a website, and now it's like, no, this is actually a tool that we're trying to drive more people towards, to get a sense for what our brand is all about. And it's working while we're sleeping at night. Like that's what you kind of need, as opposed to, you're just doing the physician liaison stuff, which is what we were doing a long time ago with physician relationships and knocking on a lot of doors. Now it's like, we're doing, a lot of more inbound, outbound marketing campaigns to bring more people to us.
Awesome. Excellent. And we were just chatting about this earlier on, but like you said, the website really is being the hub of a lot of these different marketing efforts that you're fueling people to. And your website, you can have a pretty website, but the whole point of the website is really to get people to take action, right? And book that appointment with you. And this whole process that you need to bring people through to do that. In today's world, you were just discussing this too, is that like so many clinics out there, we have a fight for talent today, right?
Mhm.
And you were telling me that you need more therapists to grow your business, just like other practices need. And so it's become this fight for talent, right? We've got to fight for talent, and we've got to market for talent today. And it's a long-term game with short-term bursts in between there, right? And so um, you can actually start to make your website again part of that hub of how people are finding you online, right? From a job search perspective. And so there's what'll happen is before someone applies with you, they need to find you. So they're doing their own searches on Google. Can you show up for those searches for like physical therapy job near me, right? Or front desk, office job near me or something like that, right? As they come, you want them to come to your website versus going off to Indeed or going off to ZipRecruiter, because you want them to learn more about you as fast as possible. So do you have a great, culture page? You have a great careers page that explains what it's like to come work for you, and reviews from your practitioners on your website. So that website can really be the hub of the starting point of that experience and how people are finding you online as job searches are happening. And you'd also mentioned to me that you had started working on a student program. You got that back in place. Is that right?
Yeah, something that we had in the past, but with COVID, it just kind of atrophied. And to your point earlier about kind of playing the long game, it's just really having, I think it's more than just finding talent. It's the right thing to do to pay it forward. And some people, I think it's a retention strategy for people that want to mentor and train the next generation of PTs. So I think it's something that I think we should be doing as part of the profession, but I think it's also helping people with a love for teaching and mentorship, and it's also helping us recruit. And it's just a very a long shadow opportunity where we get to know them, they get to know us, and it kind of helps. I think if we can get the right people in the first place, that's great. And if we don't, that's okay. It's just we move on to the next, but we can kind of vet those candidates a little bit better. We just have a stronger relationship with them.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I think it's such a critical part is to, like you said, pay it forward, but also that's your pipeline development too, right? So it's just one aspect of bringing top talent into your practice. I still advocate for, hey, make your website a big part of that process, because
Mhm.
that student's going to be looking online, checking out the places that they may want to go do an internship at.
Yeah.
And again, if you have the opportunity to talk about your student program within your website, mentoring, things that they're going to achieve by coming to work with you, right? Well, first intern with you, right? But then
Yeah.
what, probably one of the number one things that a lot of students look for in a new clinic and a new career is mentorship capabilities. So do you have a strong on paper mentorship program that you can have laid out on your website? Again, it's a
Mhm.
great way to attract students that are looking for that next step in their career with you.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. So, Bob, you've given us tons of great advice here today on scaling your practice. And so, if you had one simple step that a practice owner can take to start, improving their practice and moving towards that multi-location practice, what would your advice be to them?
I would go back to that concept of, what's your business plan for your current, whether it's a single standalone clinic, what's the plan there? What is the capacity? And reverse engineer that. So if you know what your lead capacity is, for example, how big is it? What is your square footage currently right now? How many therapists could you safely put in there, not to maximize, but optimize the space so that it's still quality of care that you're putting together, and it's safe. People are not on top of each other. And based on that, how many new patients are you going to need to get in? And based on how you've converted your new patients from your leads, going back one more step to like, how many leads do you actually need? And so how many leads can you fit in a clinic on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis? And where are you now? And I think if you're pretty close to that, above 80%, 90% of that, then you're doing pretty well, really well. And that might be time now, like, okay, let's start to look at, the process of business development and where we're going to go next and how do we replicate this and what have we learned. So I think it's really trying to reverse engineer that lead capacity and how close are you to being at that ideal, that goal or that capacity. And I think that will help inform your next move.
Awesome. Great advice. Thank you so much, Bob. So thanks again for all your wisdom here and sharing your success, and congratulations on all your success there. To our audience out there, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast or our YouTube channel. Go to practicepromotions.net. Check us out there, and also our social media channels. Got lots of tips and advice that we share with you on a constant basis here to help you be successful in your practice. So Neil Trickett here, CEO of Practice Promotions, wishing you much success in your practice.
Thank you for listening to the Practice Marketing Podcast. Don't forget to get your free practice marketing sample kit at practicepromotions.net/kit. Start 2024 off the right way by building marketing systems that automatically attract new patients from online. That's practicepromotions.net/kit.